Okay, good morning. Today, continuing on with the 7 factors of awakening, and for the next few days I wanted to just do some reading from the collected teachings of Ajahn Lee Dhammadaro, and I'll just be skipping around a bit and just reading small excerpts from some of his talks and collected teachings related to the factors of awakening. And so I wanted to begin with just this, his descriptions of all 7 factors and just some advice that he gives on how to develop these. In order to divest our hearts of sights, sounds, smells, tastes, etc., we have to develop concentration, which is composed of 7 basic qualities. Number 1, mindfulness as a factor for awakening, sati sambhojjhanga. The mind is centered firmly on the breath, aware of the body, feelings, mind, and mental qualities. Make a resolution intending to keep mindfulness and alertness firmly focused. Keep continual watch over the mind to keep it with the breath in line with your original intention. Keep warding off the hindrances, the various distractions that will come to spoil the energy of your concentration. This is mindfulness as a factor for awakening. Number 2, analysis of qualities as a factor for awakening. Dhamma vichaya sambhojjhanga. We let the breath spread throughout the body, making an enlarged frame of reference. We know how to adjust, improve, choose, and use our breaths so that they give us comfort. We throw out whichever breaths are harmful and foster whichever ones are beneficial. Once the breath is well cleansed and purified, let this purified breath spread to care for the body throughout its various parts. Once the body is nourished with this purified breath, it becomes purified as well. Our words and thoughts become purified too. What we experience now is pleasure and ease. Or if you want to use the breath to care for any particular part of the body, a great deal or a little, heavily or lightly, blatantly or subtly, you can do so as you like. This is analysis of qualities as a factor for awakening. Number 3, persistence as a factor for awakening. Virya sambhojjhanga. We don't abandon or forget the breath. We stick with it and it sticks with us as we keep warding the hindrances from the heart. We don't fasten on or become involved with distracting perceptions. We keep trying to make our stillness of mind stronger and stronger. Tend to the breath, keeping watch over the mind, not letting it stray off in search of other preoccupations that would break your original resolution. Don't grow discouraged in the face of weariness or difficulties for body or mind. Be resolved on cutting away obstacles, whatever directions they may come from, even if you have to put your life on the line. The breath is solid. This is persistence as a factor for awakening. Number 4, rapture as a factor for awakening. Piti sambhojjhanga. When the mind is quiet, the breath is full and refreshing. We're free from the hindrances and from every sort of restlessness, like a white cloth that's spotlessly clean. When the mind is clear in this way, it feels nothing but comfort and fullness, which gives rise to a sense of satisfaction, termed rapture. When these first 3 qualities are fully developed and pure, they give rise to a feeling of brightness, fullness, and satisfaction. The breath is full. This is the breath of cognitive skill, vicaya. In other words, the breath lies under the direction of mindfulness. This is rapture as a factor for awakening. Number 5, serenity as a factor for awakening. Passaddhi sambhojjhanga. The breath is solid throughout the body. The elements are at peace, and so is the mind. Nothing feels troublesome or aroused. When the mind stays with a full breath, it doesn't waver or loosen its grip in the wake of any passing distractions, as when sounds strike the ear and so forth. Feelings are still experienced as they are felt, but at this point they don't give rise to craving, attachment, states of being or birth. Awareness is simply aware. This is serenity as a factor for awakening. Number 6, concentration as a factor for awakening. Samadhi sambhojjhanga. The breath is firm, steady, and unwavering. The mind takes a firm stance in a single preoccupation. When awareness is solid and sure, radiant and full in every way, knowledge arises. We both know and see what our present condition comes from and where it will go. We see this so clearly that we will perceive karma and its results, both in ourselves and other people. This is concentration as a factor for awakening. Number 7, equanimity as a factor for awakening. Upekkha sambhojjhanga. When body, feelings, mind, and mental qualities are fully snug with one another in these two types of breath, when the mind stays with these aspects of the breath, it doesn't have to fabricate anything at all. It doesn't latch onto any manifestation of good or bad. Neutral and unperturbed, it doesn't approve or disapprove of anything. Once the mind has followed these steps from the first to the 6th, and then lets go to be still with a spacious sense of relaxation, not fastening onto any sign, preoccupation, or anything at all, that's equanimity as a factor for awakening. When we understand all 7 of these qualities and can develop them in full measure within the heart, they all come together at a single point in a single moment. The reason we're taught to develop these 7 qualities in our breathing is so that we can still the feelings within us, because feelings lie at the essence of the hindrances. The hindrances are the breath impregnated with ignorance and darkness. When this happens, we're like a person standing in the darkness who can't see himself or anyone else, because we lie fermenting in our defilements, full of conditions. This is the ordinary breath, untended and undirected. It's full, all right, but full of darkness. The state is the important one that cuts and closes off our path. Only when we get rid of these hindrances will the mind be radiant and bright, seeing the Dhamma clearly in terms of both cause and effect. So are there any questions or comments on this first part? Okay, so I'll just do a few short readings from some of the other collected teachings of Ajahn Lee, and these focus primarily on the first 3 factors of the 7 factors of awakening: mindfulness and investigation and energy, and kind of different strategies for cultivating those. Directed thought and evaluation, that is, adjusting the breath so that it's comfortable, are like polishing a mirror until it's clean and bright, so that we can see our reflection sharp and clear. When we adjust the breath, we're adjusting the mind. When we adjust the mind, it's like dressing the body. And when we dress the body, we're dressing our reflection. If our body is beautiful, its reflection will have to be beautiful too. Or you could say that it's like looking into different types of mirrors, which will transform our reflection in different ways. Say you look into a convex mirror. Your reflection will be taller than you are. If you look in a concave mirror, your reflection will be abnormally short. But if you look into a mirror that's flat, smooth, and normal, it'll give you a true reflection of yourself. In the same way, adjusting the breath to put it in good order is tantamount to putting the mind in good order as well, and can give all kinds of benefits, like an intelligent cook who knows how to prepare food so that its taste is new and nourishing in a way that appeals to her employer. Sometimes she changes the color, sometimes the flavor, sometimes the shape. She doesn't simply keep fixing things the way she always has, all year round or all her life. That is, porridge today, porridge tomorrow, porridge the next day, to the point where her employer has to go looking for a new cook. An intelligent cook who knows how to vary her offerings so that her employer is always satisfied and doesn't grow tired of her cooking is sure to get a raise in her salary or maybe a special bonus. In the same way, if you know how to adjust and vary the breath, if you're always thinking about and evaluating the various breaths in the body, you'll become thoroughly mindful and expert in all matters dealing with the breath and the other properties of the body. You'll always know how things are going with the body. Rapture, ease, and singleness will come on their own. The body will be full, the mind will be full, the body at ease and the mind at ease. All the properties will be at peace, free from unrest and disturbances. It's like knowing how to look after a small child. If your child starts crying, you know when to give it milk or candy, when to give it a bath, when to take it out for some air, when to rock it in a cradle, when to give it a toy or a doll to play with. The child will stop crying, stop whining, and leave you free to finish whatever your work. The mind is like a small innocent child. If you're skilled at looking after it, it'll be obedient, happy, and contented, and will grow day by day. When the body and mind are full and content, they won't feel hungry. They won't have to go opening up the pots and pans on the stove or pace around looking out the windows and doors. They can sleep in peace without any disturbances. Ghosts and demons, the pains of the khandhas, won't come and possess them. This way we can be at our ease, because when we sit with people. When we lie down with people. When we eat with people. When people live with people, there's no problem. But when they live with ghosts and demons, they're sure to squabble and never find any peace. If we don't know how to evaluate and adjust our breathing, there's no way our practice of concentration will give any results. Even if we sit till we die, we won't gain any knowledge or understanding at all. There was once an old monk, 70 years old, 30 years in the monkhood, who had heard good things about how I teach meditation, and so came to study with me. The first thing he asked was, "What method do you teach?" "Breath meditation," I told him. "You know, Bhutto, Bhutto." As soon as he heard that, he said, "I've been practicing that method ever since the time of Ajahn Mun, Bhutto, Bhutto, ever since I was young, and I've never seen anything good come of it. All it does is Bhutto, Bhutto, without ever getting anywhere at all. And now you're going to teach me to Bhutto some more. What for? You want me to Bhutto till I die?" This is what happens when people have no sense of how to adjust and evaluate their breathing. They'll never find what they're looking for, which is why adjusting and spreading the breath is a very important part of doing breath meditation. Getting to know yourself, becoming acquainted with your body, your mind, the properties of earth, water, fire, wind, space, and consciousness, knowing what they come from, how they arise, how they disband, how they're inconstant, stressful, and not self. All of this you have to find out by trying to explore on your own. Only then will your knowledge be of real use. If your knowledge simply follows what's in books or what other people tell you, it's knowledge that comes from labels and concepts, not from your own discernment. It's not really knowledge. Knowing only what other people tell you is like following them down a road, and what could be good about that? They might lead you down the wrong road, and if the road is dusty, they might kick dust into your ears and eyes. So in your practice of the Dhamma, don't simply believe what other people say. Don't believe labels. Practice concentration until you gain knowledge on your own. Only then will it count as discernment. Only then will it be safe. Any questions or comments on that one? When you sit and meditate, tell yourself that your body is like your home. When you repeat the word Bhutto in with the breath, it's like inviting a monk into your home. When people invite a monk into their home, what do they do in order to qualify as having good manners? Number 1, they have to prepare a place for him to sit down. Number 2, they provide him with good food or drinking water. Number 3, they have to converse with him. When we meditate, preparing a place to sit down means thinking Bhut in with the in-breath and Do out with the out. If we're mindful to think in this way, the word Bhutto will always stay snug with the breath. Whenever our thinking slips away from the breath, it's as if we put a rip in the seat we're preparing for our guest. And don't forget that before you prepare a seat, you first have to sweep the place clean. In other words, when you first start out, you should breathe in long and deep, and then let the breath come all the way out, 2 or 3 times. Then you gradually allow the breath to grow lighter bit by bit until it's just enough for you to follow comfortably. Don't let it grow any weaker or stay any stronger than just right. Then you start combining Bhutto with the in and out breath. When you do this, your visiting monk will come into your home. Now make sure that you stay with him. Don't go running off anywhere else. If your mind runs off to hang around with external concepts of past or future, it's as if you've run away from the monk you've invited into your home, which is really bad manners. Once the monk has sat down in the seat you've prepared for him, you have to give him some good food or water, and then find good things to converse with him. The good food here is the food of intentions, the food of sensory contact, and the food of consciousness. The food of intention stands for the way you adjust the breath so as to make it comfortable both for the body and for the mind. For instance, you're observant to see which kind of breathing is good for the body and which kind is bad. What kind of in-breathing feels easy? What kind of out-breathing feels easy? Does it feel good to breathe in fast and out fast? How about in slow and out slow? You have to experiment and then taste the food you've prepared. This is one kind of food for the mind. This is why being intent to stay with the breath is called the food of intention. When you adjust the breath to the point where it feels comfortable and in good order, it'll give rise to a sense of fullness and ease. That's when you can say that you've provided your visiting monk with good, nourishing food. When he's finished his meal, he's going to chant blessings for the sake of your well-being and happiness, so that you'll be free from pain and suffering. Or, as the saying goes, the power of the Buddha gets rid of suffering. In other words, when you've adjusted the breath properly, the pains in the body will disappear. Even though there may be some that don't disappear, they don't impinge on the mind. As for pain and suffering in the heart, that will all disappear. The mind will cool down. When it cools down, it'll be at its ease, quiet, blooming, and bright. And as for the saying, the power of the Dhamma gets rid of dangers, the various forms of Mara coming to disturb the body, such as the pains of the aggregates, will all vanish. The mind will be free from dangers and animosities. And as for the saying, the power of the Sangha gets rid of disease, all the various diseases in the mind, sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, and despair will disappear. This way, once you've invited this monk into your home and provided him with good food, he's going to give you 3 kinds of blessing. You escape from pain, from danger, and from disease. This is part of the blessing that your visiting monk will give you. But if, when you've invited a monk into your home, you go running off outside, in other words, if you forget the breath or go hanging around with external thoughts, it's really impolite, and the monk is going to be put to difficulties. It's as if you had invited him into your home, but had forgotten to prepare his meal. So if you aren't really intent on the breath, and you don't really welcome your monk into your home, you won't get this kind of blessing. The last part of inviting your monk into your home is to converse with him. Once he's eaten his fill, you talk with him. This stands for the qualities of directed thought, evaluation, rapture, pleasure, and singleness of preoccupation. You connect all 6 types of breath energy in the body, that is the upflowing breath, the downflowing breath, the breath in the stomach, the breath in the intestines, the breaths that course through the body, and the in and out breathing, so that they all flow into one another. It's as when you put up a telephone line. If the line stays in good shape, you can hear what they say all over the world. But if the line is cut, you can't get word of what they're saying even in Bangkok, just down the road. So when you keep your line in good shape, you can hear anything being said anywhere at all. When the mind stays in the first jhana this way, it's as if your visiting monk is talking with you and you're talking with him. and the things you're talking about are all Dhamma. This puts you in a good mood. As time passes, you feel so good that you don't even want to eat. This is rapture. The body feels full. At the same time, the mind is free from disturbances and so feels pleasure. Wherever you get a sense of pleasure, you keep staying interested in that point. This is singleness of preoccupation. When you welcome your visiting monk in this way, he's going to keep coming to visit you. No matter where you go, he'll be able to reach you. Even if you're staying in the mountains or forest wilderness, he'll be able to give you whatever help you need. Are there any questions or comments on this one?
I was reading Ajahn Lee's Abhayagiri recently. He went to India a couple times. I was wondering it's kind of maybe off topic, but how much that may have colored his meditation technique. Like it seemed he was pretty interested in the sadhus there and what he saw them doing. I wonder if anybody knows if he picked anything up while in India as well.
I don't, but also he was quite a how do you say, personality-wise, he was an innovator and quite, to me, quite similar to Ajahn Chah in his very agile mind and very interested in reflection and investigation. So he's quite interesting. So he would be interested in coming up with, not just sort of plodding along in the same old paths that has been done. He'd be reflecting in different ways. And certainly being in India, it's been so long since I've read that I don't remember his experiences. But being in India is also just being exposed to new ideas as well.
Ajahn Lee Dhammadaro once told me that he was influenced by the pranayama there, but I'm not sure where he got that from.
Slightly different thing. I like the translation of Ekagata as singleness of preoccupation that you're using rather than like one-pointedness.
Yeah.
This is what you often hear. It's sort of like you're wholly engaged, with your contemplation, but it's not necessarily like this kind of, tiny little point that you're focusing your breath and your breathing on, or it's kind of more of a broader kind of a wholehearted commitment to the contemplation.
Okay, so this last reading I wanted to just read kind of towards the end of one of his Dhamma talks, and he is using the simile in this talk of like traveling across the ocean as simile for the practice, and he's kind of talking about different steps that one has to go through in order to safely make it across. And I wanted to just read the last step he talks about, which is learning how to distill fresh water from salt water. The third thing is the method for distilling salt water so that it can become fresh. This stands for practicing tranquility meditation and insight meditation. We give rise to directed thought and evaluation within the mind. And what is salt water? Salt water stands for defilement. The defilements of the mind are saltier than salt. When we try to eat salt, even just a little, we can't swallow it because we find it so salty. But the defilements are even saltier than that. They can crust us over so that we spoil and rot in all sorts of ways. When this is the case, what can we do? We have to filter or distill them. Filtering refers to yoniso manasikara, appropriate attention. Whatever we do, we have to reflect, to be observant, to consider things carefully before we act. This is the first vat in our distillery. Our second vat is meditation, contemplating our fabrications by using skillful strategies, giving rise to the factors of jhana. The first factor is directed thought, keeping in mind the preoccupation that can act as a foundation for the mind, its gochara dhamma, or proper range, as a way of aiming it in the right direction by developing the establishings of mindfulness, satipatthana. This is how we distill salt water. The four establishings of mindfulness are focusing on the body in and of itself, focusing on feelings in and of themselves, focusing on the mind in and of itself, and focusing on mental qualities in and of themselves. All four of these are gathered in the body and mind. This is one way of looking at them, called anuloma, or in line with the standard way. The other way is called patiloma, in reverse of the standard way, in which we take all four and turn them into one. The standard way is when we practice directed thought and evaluation. But when we take all four and turn them into one, we take only one part of the body, as they say in the great establishing of mindfulness discourse. We focus on the body in and of itself as an object of tranquility meditation. In other words, we take all four parts and gather them into the body. The properties of earth, water, fire, and wind, that's the body. When we see that it has many parts and many aspects, preventing the mind from growing still, making it distracted, we choose only one of the parts. For example, we put aside the properties of earth, water, and fire, and stay still only with the property of wind. We focus down on the wind property as the object we keep in mind. This is called the body in and of itself. The wind property here means the in and out breath. When we keep the breath in mind and watch constantly over it, that's called developing the body in and of itself. When the breath comes in, we watch it. When it goes out, we watch it. We keep surveying it constantly. Sometimes it's coarse, sometimes it's refined, sometimes it's cool, sometimes it's warm. No matter what it's like, we keep watching it. Sometimes, just as we're about to reach something good in the meditation, we get discouraged. It's like boiling water in our distillery. Normally, two sorts of things can happen. If the fire is too strong, the water starts boiling so fast that it all turns into steam, overflows the vat, and puts out the fire. If the fire is too weak, the water doesn't boil, and so it produces no steam at all. Sometimes the fire is just right, not too strong, not too weak, just right in between, the middle way. The fire is just enough to give rise to steam, not so much that it overflows the vat, but enough for steam to come out of the vat, enough for the steam to become drops of fresh water. This is why we're taught to be observant. When the desire to succeed in the meditation is really strong, it can prevent the mind from growing still. The breath gets stirred up and can't grow subtle. This is called desire getting in the way. Other times the desire is too weak. You sit there, the mind still, the breath refined, light, and you drift right to sleep. The water never comes to a boil. You have to put things together in the right proportions, just right, with mindfulness and alertness and monitoring things at all times. When the mind is staying with coarse breathing, you know. When it's staying with refined breathing, you know. When your mindfulness and alertness are constant in this way, the result is rapture. The body is light, cool, comfortable, and at ease. The mind has a sense of fullness, blooming and bright in its concentration. This is where fresh water is beginning to gather in your distillery. The salt water begins to disappear. In other words, the salt water of sensual desire, ill will, torpor, and lethargy restlessness and anxiety and uncertainty, letting the mind run to the past, run to the future, not clearly seeing the present, begins to disappear. When the mind is really still and refined, it gives rise to concentration with a sense of ease and fullness so that you can sit for many hours. This is the same as taking a single jar of fresh water with us in our boat. If we have the intelligence to distill fresh water out of salt water, our one jar of water will become a magic jar, providing us with enough water to drink all the way around the world. In the same way, when we develop concentration by using directive thought to lift the mind to its object as the first step in the first jhana, and evaluation to keep contemplating the object of our meditation to make it subtle and refined, when the properties of the body have been thoroughly evaluated, the mind will be able to contemplate the drawbacks of the 5 hindrances. The body will grow quiet. This is called kaya passaddhi, physical serenity, and the mind will grow still, citta passaddhi, mental serenity. The body will be at ease with no pains or heaviness. This is kaya lahuta, physical lightness. This is where rapture arises. The mind will feel full and satisfied with no restlessness or distraction, like a person who has eaten his fill, or a child who has eaten its fill, so that it no longer disturbs its mother or father. When the heart has rapture as its companion, it will be free from unrest. It will be cool. It will be able to use the fresh water it has distilled from salt water as a means of washing its clothing, as a means of bathing its body. Then it will be able to wash the earth property, which is like a rag, the water property, the wind property, and the fire property, all of which are like rags. They're always ripping and tearing, always getting dirty. This is why we have to care for them at all times. When the mind has given rise to the factors of concentration, the power of rapture will come to wash our properties of earth, water, wind, and fire. Then, if we want to be warm, we won't have to sit in the sunlight. If we want to be cool, we won't have to sit in the breeze. If, when we're stuck in the sunlight, we want to be cool, we'll be cool. If, when we're stuck in water, we want to be warm, we'll be warm. That way we can be at our ease, like a person who has clothing to cover his body, and so has no need to feel bashful when entering human society. This is why meditators have no fear of difficult conditions. Why is that? Because they have their own source of fresh water, water to bathe in, water to drink. They've got all the water they need to use for bathing their body, for bathing their eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind, for bathing the properties of earth, water, wind, and fire. That's water for using. As for water for drinking, they can develop concentration to an even higher level, to give rise to a sense of inner pleasure, pleasure that arises from within the mind itself. When the mind feels pleasure, both the body and mind will be at their ease. The mind will imbibe nothing but pleasure, and there's no pleasure higher than that of the mind at peace. Thus, rapture is water for using, for bathing the body and mind, whereas pleasure is drinking water specifically for the mind. So whoever has the discernment to distill fresh water from salt water will experience ease and well-being. This is our first distillery. The second distillery is where we take the water from the first and distill it to even greater purity. This is the same as when they refine sugar. After the first stage, it still contains some alcohol, so they have to refine it a second time. This stands for developing insight meditation, something very refined, so refined that nobody else can see it. You can stand and practice insight meditation, sit and practice insight meditation. You can lie down. You can even be giving a Dhamma talk and practice insight meditation. The mouth speaks, the mind thinks of its topic. When you think of something to say, or thoughts simply arise within the mind, there's no attachment to bodily fabrication, that is the processes of the body, no attachment to verbal fabrication, the thoughts that fabricate words for other people to hear. There's no attachment to your words, and your mind doesn't run out after them. As for thoughts that arise from ignorance and craving, you know them immediately for what they are. The mind in that state isn't involved in bodily fabrication, verbal fabrication, or mental fabrication. The mind is then released from all fabrications. All fabrications that arise simply change and then disband. This is true of bodily fabrications, verbal fabrications, and mental fabrications. When you see these things in terms of their common characteristics, when you see them as inconstant, constantly spinning around, stressful, hard to bear, and not self, beyond your control, then whether you're standing, sitting, lying down, performing physical work, or speaking, even when you're just sitting and thinking alone by yourself, you'll find all things good and noble flowing to you at all times. This is called practicing insight meditation. A person like this can set up an enormous distillery, turning the water of the sea into clouds. When the water of the sea is turned into clouds, they'll float through the sky. Wherever people are suffering from hardships, the water in the clouds will come raining down, watering the land where people live so that they can grow food conveniently. In the same way, when people have released their hearts from the power of worldliness, their goodness is like clouds. When the clouds turn into rain, the rainwater will help good people live in happiness and well-being. This is one of the benefits that come from those who have developed discernment. Okay, so that's pretty much all that I was planning to share today, so maybe we can just end a few minutes early.